What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. I am your host, Eric, and each week I'm going to rate and review a new movie or TV show that falls within the horror genre. Now, this is a show for horror fans, hosted by a horror fan, who's just here to share my opinions and experiences with my fellow horror friends in hopes that you may gain something new to watch or not watch, and really just talk about all things related to this beautifully dark and spooky world that we call horror. So if this sounds like a show for you, stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. Hi everybody, and welcome back to another Spooky Sunday episode of The Horror Within Me. I'm your host, Eric, and this is a very special week, because this week I am joined with horror and gothic thriller writer, Joseph Federico. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, you're probably wondering, how the hell did these two even find each other? And this is the beautiful part of the digital world, is Joseph, you found me on Instagram.
Correct. I am a social media hound, and I was connecting with horror podcasters, and you were my number one that I wanted to connect with. So here we are.
Thank you. Yeah, the world of horror is very fun, and I think the community is really good. I think that's what I love the most and why I feel comfortable putting myself out there.
Absolutely. There are so many different subgenres and so many different podcasts out there that each cast or staff that produces these podcasts really has their own unique perspective, which I love as a horror author and a horror, fan myself.
Exactly. That's what I pride myself on, is that I love so many like different subgenres within horror. You know, I like the old school horror. I like slashers. I like children's horror. You know, like things I grew up with, like Are You Afraid of the Dark, and things like Goosebumps. I love it all.
I have been a horror fan since middle school, so but I also started writing my own horror when I was in grade school. So I was pretty young when I got into the genre myself.
That's awesome. I know we're not going to tell our ages, right? No.
No.
So we discussed a little bit about our backgrounds before we decided to record the episode, and we both were fans of R.L. Stine and Stephen King. So were you this, like me in the 90s and discovered Goosebumps with R.L. Stine, or?
Yeah, that was my between Goosebumps, reading that literature, and then aging into the Fear Street series as a young adult I'm not going to give dates, but also watching, like you had mentioned, Are You Afraid of the Dark? That was my go-to before I got into Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side as a older child, teen or tween. That was my go-to, spook of the week. And then reading, I could not get enough of the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine. Was my number one go-to for that literature at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Fear Street, because I always thought of Fear Street, like you said, it's a step above Goosebumps. And my older sister was reading Fear Street when I was reading Goosebumps, and I always thought, like, I'm going to graduate up to Fear Street eventually. You know what I mean? I don't think I ever read them, though.
Oh, sorry. I still read Fear Street. He has so many books that are coming out still that I just can't get enough of R.L. Stine, even as an adult. So,
did you read his book Red Rain?
I have it on my wish list. I did not read that yet. No.
I actually read that years ago. So a little background, because I'd like to be like open. So I was never a huge reader growing up. I just played more video games and watched more movies. I didn't start reading until I was in my 20s.
Okay.
So I'm catching up on certain things. And who I discovered was Stephen King, because of my love for horror, and I heard of him and his movies. So that's where I kind of gravitated towards.
Yeah.
And R.L. Stine. But I did discover the Red Rain book, which, if memory serves correctly, it was okay. But you as a writer and a reader probably have a different level of what you look for in writing. If that makes sense?
I absolutely do, especially writing and producing and publishing my own books. I'm trying to, if this makes sense, renegotiate, rewire my brain as a writer, but namely for the queer community, because there aren't enough queer books written by queer people, in my opinion. So I'm trying to put myself in the community's seat, or brain, and trying to kind of reevaluate that literature as well once I start writing those books.
I mean, I think that's very important as a member of the queer community as well, is the representation, obviously, and just support and sharing that. And like you said, there's not enough out there. And there's so much in the horror world that I don't know what it is with queer and horror, but we just love it. We just go to it. I don't know what it is about it. And it's all different reasons.
I can tell you, I mean, if you want to not to take over the whole conversation, sorry,
Oh, God.
but for me, this is very cathartic even talking about it because I'm dealing with my own stuff as a writer and a more woke gay man, in my late whatever age I am. you
Yeah,
know,
I know. We got to be cautious of
yeah,
that,
no, be very
right?
cautious about that. So I work through my own traumas as a queer man through my writing, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, but it is very cathartic to write about these things within my own genre, my own works. But I feel especially as gay men, younger, older, whoever we are within the community, horror brings us together, number one. Number two, I think we're attracted to the genre, and I have new gay friends that also love horror, and meeting them and talking about all kinds of movies, what we watched growing up, and as teens and tweens, even as adults. We're drawn to that because I think of the traumas that we share collectively, and they kind of get resolved over and over again in a positive manner because of the horror genre, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So
I think,
that's where I come from as a horror fan, but a horror author, and trying to kind of protect myself or my younger self from any horrors that may have occurred within the queer community or my own life story. So
yeah, that's important. And I'm glad that you used the word trauma because it's an important word that I use weekly on my
you
show.
do, yeah.
It's something important to me because I have I have this relationship in my brain, which is strange with like Edgar Allan Poe, and I say it sometimes where the tragedy, I feel like my life is set up for so much tragedy. Now, this not so much now. I've worked through like I'm not a psychiatrist or mental health specialist either, but a lot of us we've worked through things different ways, like you were saying. For me, I always related to that because I always like I was a lot of loss in my life growing up, a
Hmm.
lot of death, and then a lot of other kind of traumas. So the Edgar Allan Poe thing was like, oh my god, he's like cursed, everyone he loves dies, things like that. It's just you have, as you get older and you start working through that, and right now life is good. You start to realize too, which is why I wanted to do this podcast, is that I felt so alone for a long time,
Yeah.
and now even though like that's why I do the podcast, not because some people do things because they want to hit certain levels of status or whatever.
Or
I literally do
fame or
this.
attraction. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I literally do this because and I know it sounds so cliche, but I really do it to try to find someone who may have felt like me and can relate and not feel that alone.
It doesn't sound cliche at all because that's what I do with my own works is if I can connect with one more, I wouldn't even say fan because I don't want to sound like I'm looking for fame and
Yeah,
fortune.
yeah,
I write these books to also assist people in the community. And I'm all inclusive with my characters. I have straight, gay, everything in between, trans. I mean, but also that's myself working through my inner trauma, you know?
yeah,
So if I can reach one person through social media, number one, but also through my works, then I find that to be successful because then what I had set out to do worked.
yeah,
Just plain
exactly.
and
And
simple.
getting comfortable with the word fan is something to work on too, because I feel the same way. Like I don't like to use the word fan, but also it's okay for someone to be a fan of your content.
Sure. Sure.
And
I'm very weary, as I become more of a. Again, I'm not trying to blow smoke at myself,
yeah,
or but I have become more of a public figure in the last during COVID because of social media and what I've been through and having my own show. And these are all blessings in my life. These are not trying to earn fandom from the internet. Um, but it is difficult to use the word fan because you don't see yourself, or maybe you I wouldn't say suffer, but you experience um, like imposter syndrome as a creative,
Yes.
and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But also, is it working? And you measure your metrics and your success based off that.
Absolutely, and that the imposter syndrome is something I struggle with all the time, with every part of my life. I don't know what it is.
Very difficult.
Maybe it's a gay thing. I don't know.
But
Um,
maybe like maybe it's a gay thing too. Like maybe it's a curse. Maybe it's a blessing. I still haven't figured that out
I don't know if we ever will, but that's fine. We're gonna just have fun
yet.
anyway, right? It's what we do.
Exactly.
The gays always make things fun,
We
don't we?
truck on. We make it look fabulous, and we keep on going. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So I really do want to talk about you as a writer because I it's fascinating to me. So before we dive into that, I'm gonna do what I always do. It's called a terrifying trivia
Oh
question,
boy.
and you as a horror fan and writer, you probably will know it. And I usually don't answer it until like the end of the episode. So
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you again at the end of the episode to give an opportunity for the listeners to see if they get it. So this week's terrifying trivia question is in honor of my favorite writer, Stephen King.
Okay.
So, my question is what was Stephen King's first book and the year it was published?
Oh my gosh.
So, that's this week's question,
Okay.
and I'll answer it at the end of the episode. Do you think you know it, though?
You know, I have it in my brain. I could be completely off. I would
Okay.
like to say Carrie, maybe like early 1970s, like 1972.
I'll answer you at the
That's what
end.
I'm giving as my final answer right now. So,
Right now, that's your final answer. Okay. So looking over, you have two books out, am I correct?
I have two books out that are the horror genre. Correct.
In the horror genre, okay. And the first one is called Voodoo Juice, correct?
Correct.
And you've released that in
I
2017?
did. I self published that one. Yes.
Okay, and you spell voodoo a little differently. Is there something specific behind that?
Um, how much time do we have? So it's a combination of the original spelling of voodoo with VOODOO, and voodoo. They are one and the same essentially, but I put a little twist on it, essentially because I uh, took it from a drink that started the voodoo series back in 2012 on the shores of Myrtle Beach. Was called the Voodoo Juice Bucket, which led to writing the books. So,
Okay.
yes.
So tell me a little bit about Voodoo Juice. What would all right if so as someone coming in blind, how would you describe the book? Like what is your prologue or
So the first one, the first Voodoo Juice, follows Riley Clark, and he's this disturbed homosexual living in the French Quarter in 2014 New Orleans, and a spirit from the past, tries to take vengeance on his family, and he has to resolve that by time traveling throughout the French Quarter in the 18th century as well as 2014. And it's set in Mardi Gras, which is my favorite holiday. You get to eat and celebrate and become a different person, which I think in the queer community we're attracted to that.
yes?
So that is essentially the first book, and we have to figure out, why Riley's being haunted from his past with his family.
It sounds great. I'm definitely gonna have to pick it
Thank
up
you.
because it's definitely my type of read. I like the time travel aspect. I like the paranormal aspect, and obviously I like the queer aspect because it even for me, I don't know about for you, it took me a while to get comfortable even reading or watching queer content because I was raised on heterosexual content that even though I am gay, I wasn't even used to being represented. So watching and reading things like that, even to me, felt a little wrong.
It still does for me, to be perfectly honest. My partner of going on 17 years, and I started watching American Horror Story New York City last night. Even watching that on screen is still very uncomfortable for me as a gay man who participates in, what we do.
Yeah.
We're human. There's no shame in that. We're a very sex positive, family. But I was raised in a heteronormative, town, very waspy, very hush hush. You couldn't be yourself. So I certainly do carry. I do internalize my own homophobia, and that uh, still carries throughout my life, even to this day. Watching a queer centric horror movie or show or even writing it is very uncomfortable. But as I had said earlier, that's cathartic to me, kind of working through my BS and hoping it won't be as uncomfortable for my readers.
Exactly. And I think it's important that, people realize that even as members of the community, that there is a certain level of homophobia within ourselves. And it's traumas that we dealt with and ways that we learn to survive in this world.
So we essentially
So
try to be the final girls of our own stories. I mean,
exactly. I remember growing up, I would tell people like, I grew up in an urban area, so very masculine men and things like that. So I mean, when I finally came out, I navigated it to be, well, I'm gay, but I'm not that gay. I didn't want to be too gay. I was the gay that people were comfortable with.
and you were living for society rather than yourself.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
completely, I was the same way until actually somewhat recently this past summer. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I've been unapologetic for a few years. I was, in a bad relationship for many
sure.
years and under a rock. And then I got, ended that and found me. And I was almost 30 then. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm right there with you, my friend. I mean,
and then we find ways to connect with community. Like I do this podcast, you write books, and you have the show and all this other stuff. And it's just really great to have two queer content creators.
even just talking about it is so helpful.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that there are other listeners that can listen to this conversation and not feel so negative for having those thoughts in their own community.
Or that they're wrong, or that somebody
Yeah,
within the community themselves, itself is being judgmental of them.
exactly. Because we are some judgy
We can be
queens.
judgy queens sometimes. I mean,
It comes with
it
the
comes with
the
the trauma
card.
territory. That's all I gotta say.
Yes. So sorry, we off
I
track a
know.
little bit, but it's
Let's
fine.
just go off. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm all about that. You wrote a second Voodoo Juice though, and there's an
Yes,
origins Cody story, and that came out this past year in 2022,
it
right?
did. So August of 2022, I quite literally, and I'm not sharing this again to blow smoke or to just like essentially a
It's all
cautionary
right. You
tale.
blow smoke. You wrote a book and it's published. Boost yourself up.
I'm like still getting used to that. I have therapy for those things. Um, but I was in a very unique position this past summer. I was finding myself again going through my own re-evolution, speaking with new friends that are now becoming family, and their boyfriend. Um, and I was finding myself. I just had gotten back from Florida. I'm also very spiritual, so I think something happened to me in the swamps of no end of nowhere, Florida, and I came back this completely different person, and I had almost finished the book, and there was a lot of the evolution that I put into the edits and the rewrite of the ending of my second book. Um, so I had pushed myself before I had gone on vacation. I had already booked the book signing, and I had invited people to this event I was hosting to release the book officially down in Myrtle Beach, um, where all the gays came out. It was a whole thing. I cried afterwards. It was a whole big thing. Um, but I rode essentially the brink of insanity trying to finish this book, not only for myself, but what I was trying to work through that had happened to me from between July and the mid August, um, trying to get this project published and written and out, ready for the event and to share it with the world.
Yeah. So, is it a sequel or a prequel?
It is a oh, I wish I had done my research. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
What is the phrase they use in the latest Scream? It's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. It's
Oh,
a
yes, it's yeah. Oh God, what is it
that.
called? I know this. It's like what everyone's doing now. It's like with the legacy characters, and
Yes.
they swap out all the other sequels, and it's just a direct sequel. Oh my God, I know this term,
So
and I don't
whatever
remember.
we're thinking of, at the same time, that's what this second book is.
Okay, okay, it's gonna come to me. It's gonna drive
Same
me
here. Like
freaking nuts now.
once we stop, I'll text you and we'll go offline.
Is it a requel?
Yes,
Yes, like a reboot, but not a full
but
reboot.
not a sequel either. It is like somewhere in the
Yeah,
middle.
yeah, okay, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, because Halloween did it, and it's as you can see behind me.
Yes.
That's my man.
That's my man too. Although the gentleman that played the Scarecrow character in the latest Halloween is also my like horror hunk. Um,
Oh, he's pretty
he
cute,
is
right?
pretty cute.
I wasn't
Oh yeah,
Corey. I
he's
wasn't anticipating it.
he's a cutie. Yeah, yeah.
Real quick about Halloween Ends. Just we won't get into it, but are you a fan or not a fan?
Major fan.
You liked
And how
it.
about yourself?
I liked it. I did. I get why people were upset,
Yep.
but I liked it.
It
Did I
was
want
it was
something
very
different?
well done, in my opinion.
It was well done, but I even myself anticipated a different kind of sequel after the way that they ended
Sure,
Kills.
me too.
But I was happy with it, and I don't want the same Halloween movie over and over and over again. And this is something that we've never had, so I was happy to see a new movie with new kind of themes.
And they left it sort of open ended at the end as well, which I'm
Yeah,
anticipating potentially.
somebody somewhere is going to do something another time.
Exactly.
I hope
And I'm going to
so,
be there with
because
my
I
T-shirt on and my mask, and I will be
yeah
getting tickets for that
yeah
as well.
exactly. So because I see that we talked before and we were both fans of Halloween. I think you said that was the first movie that you
It
saw.
was in middle school, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, I was very young. My mom was a horror fan, and she didn't care about what the hell I watched. She would have me watch like the Jason Freddy's and Halloween movies, and I was young. Like I remember like hiding behind our love
yeah.
seat and peeking out and watching it, but also loving like having I have this like really dark, macabre, like infatuation with
I love
horror. Like
that.
I just love it.
Yeah,
Like I always played like people would tease me growing up like my toys were Halloween decorations. Like I had normal toys too, but I mean I literally carried around a rubber skeleton and
sure.
bats and I just loved everything about it. But yeah, I Halloween was amazing. The score, the mask, the presence, the atmosphere. Did you get it? So what was it that made you want to write? Was it a book, a movie, a
Well, I
feeling?
started writing. Actually, my first newspaper article was self-published on like some scrap paper in my guest room in 1990. We're going to stop there. Um, and I was inspired by it was Christmas time, and there was some news um, headline about Swamp Thing, the original Swamp Thing in the 90s, meet Santa Claus. So I kind of covered my own. I was a journalist, and I put myself in that role, and I wrote my first piece about Swamp Thing at Christmas time, teaming up with Santa Claus. So that was my first infatuation essentially with horror, where I got so excited and I drew the pictures and I colored them in and I published my first article. And then I got into R.L. Stine, was also a very big inspiration, to me, as well as Stephen King and Mary Shelley
Yeah.
at a very early age. It was the abridged versions of all those, of all those great classic novels. So I would have to say it was probably R.L. Stine and the horror genre that was on television at the time when I was younger. That really
Okay.
assisted my infatuation in evolving and growing into what it is today.
I feel like in the 90s there was so much horror content for all
There really
ages.
was.
Very differently. Like even the cartoons I used to watch, like the Beetlejuice cartoon, there was a Tales from the Crypt Keeper cartoon, Adam's Family cartoon, but like also the movies. There were movies for literally all ages. Then like, we talked about Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like maybe because I'm older, I don't see the younger generation's exposure to horror. But I also feel like, and this is gonna make me sound really old, I also feel like there's more thought on what kids are exposed to now than what it was for we may be in the same generation. I feel like we're in the same
I think we
generation.
are. Let's just go with that.
Yeah, yeah. Than our generation. I think we're from the same state too.
I'm from New Jersey originally, so
That's
yeah.
where I
Okay,
live.
yeah. So
Yes.
we are definitely in the same state. We are
Yeah, New Jersey
born
all
and
day.
bred.
Jersey boys. Yes. I'm from. I don't long live there, but I was born and raised in Trenton, New
Okay.
Jersey. So very different. So yeah. But yeah, the way things are today, I feel like there's a lot of restrictions on content. Well, maybe not on digital content now because now there's like literally everything at your fingertips. But I mean, parental things that people don't want their kids watching or seeing.
But there are ways around that because I have two. I have a niece and a nibbling. One is non-binary, which I'm also getting used to, and that exposure and like loving them no matter what. Number one.
Yeah.
So they introduced me. They're a whole different generation to 8-bit horror, which I had not been introduced to. That's kind of jump scares, electronic horror that's on YouTube, and
Oh, nice.
I that completely scares the what out of me. I promised them I would watch their horror movies essentially, and they're shorts, and they're written by some unknown artist and creative that had a history in horror, and producing, and they are actually quite good. So I do, and I'm actually getting goosebumps talking about it because it scares the hell out of me.
I'm gonna check this out.
So there are ways around parental controls on content, especially on the internet, and
Oh,
I've seen that first
absolutely.
person. Yeah,
That the internet's a whole different thing, and that's another thing I have to keep remembering because I have like 6 nieces and nephews. The oldest is 23, the youngest is 1. So growing up with them, like they some of them really are big in horror, like me. Like my niece who's 13, she loves horror. We stream like Dead by Daylight together. We go to the horror convention. We love everything about it. But then I have a nephew who's not so big on it, so it's kind of fun. But like you were saying, there's little shorts. Everything's on YouTube or TikTok now,
it's very
and
consumable, very snackable, and actually, sorry to interrupt, but it
no,
just
go ahead.
came to mind. It's called the Walton Files, and I would recommend everybody going on YouTube and watching. If you have like 3 hours of time to kill, it's well worth it.
It's funny that you mentioned like this the timing that they are because everything is so short now because we consume so much information that people have such short attention
Exactly.
spans that they want to get everything within a certain amount of time and be done.
Correct.
Like I think I saw something on the internet the other day that was like bring back television shows that had 23
Yeah.
episodes and none of this 8 episode
Yeah.
bullshit. And I was like, I mean, I was a huge Buffy the Vampire
Oh my
Slayer fan.
gosh.
Like
Yes.
Sarah Michelle
Yes.
Gellar is my god, and I love her to death. But there was a lot of episodes.
There, even in the rewatch, once COVID, we all binged shows and such are
Yeah.
and the comforting shows of our childhood in the 90s and early 2000s. um I would have to agree, bring back the 23 episode seasons, or at least try to, because
For some
or at
of
least some
them.
of them, because that content is still consumable and snackable. We can stream it on YouTube. I mean, well, yes, YouTube, but also Netflix and Hulu, whatever streaming services you have on your smart devices and television.
Yeah.
But give me more than eight episodes. True Blood was only 10 episodes, or and then it switched to 8 episodes, and then
I never finished
oh
True
my
Blood.
gosh, we need to
I'm a terrible
terrible,
person.
terrible gay, terrible gay.
A terrible gay. I used to watch it. I don't know. I think I stopped around season 3 or
Oh, there are
4.
like 6. Yeah.
And it's so funny that you mentioned this because I was on Hulu because so my husband is not a
Oh,
horror fan
travesty.
at all. He is my light to the darkness within me. But because he's married to me, he has to consume certain levels of horror content. Like if there's going to be anything that we do together, like not saying that there's other stuff we do, but anyway. So he's seen all the Halloweens because I'm a huge fan. He's seen all the Screams, like he's seen those kind of movies, but certain things he's just not excited to
Sure.
see. Like he won't watch Terrifier. Like that's not his thing. So I still haven't seen Terrifier 2 because I have to find the time for 2.5 hours
To
to
block that
watch
out
it.
in your calendar to get through those.
Yeah, but I was on Hulu because I'm trying to finish the second season of American Horror Stories, the
Yes.
shorts, and True Blood is now on Hulu.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either, but I'm like, oh my god, I can go and finish watching
Yes,
True
I
Blood.
highly recommend. I may have to come on and talk about True Blood with you once you finish.
Yes, we're gonna have to do a
Yes,
recap. We'll do a True
please
Blood
do.
episode. Yes, but yeah, it's also I think the reason that seasons are so short is because they want to create these binge worthy shows that you can finish in a day. Like I just started. This is not horror related, but me and my husband were looking for something to watch together, so we started watching The White Lotus on
I just
HBO
finished.
Max.
I just finished.
So we just finished. We watched the first season in a day. There's only
Yep.
6 episodes. I mean, what are we doing with our lives? What does that say about us? 6 hours on the couch, but whatever.
No judgment,
But
because I do the
yesterday we
same
started.
thing. Like, in between meetings and clients and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we watched the first season, and we finally started season 2 yesterday. I think we're on episode 4. But yeah, we can watch. We watch an entire season of a show in a day, in an
Even
afternoon.
that, I know it just swept the Golden Globes last night. Is
I was so mad that there was the Golden Globes on, and I didn't
I
realize
know,
it.
bad gaze. That's cool. I get my recap on social media and Facebook.
Yeah. Did you see Jennifer Coolidge's
I
intro
I did
thingy?
not see that yet. I saw all of her interviews except for her intro.
She did like a present to her award presentation. Is so fucking
She
funny.
is. This is the year of Jen Coolidge. Hands down. She's
It
my
is.
current queen. In many different ways. So
I'm definitely gonna have to put in the fact for the gays in the description of this episode that you want to listen to this because it's not just about horror. We're just
we're just
fabulous gays
talking
over here
about
today.
all the gay things.
Yes, exactly. But yes, so we are gonna circle back to you because I'm so
Sure.
intrigued by like the writing thing because I used to I everyone was a writer at some point when they were
Sure.
younger.
Sure.
Nothing against what I'm saying to
No.
you, but like
No.
for me, I used to try to write little stories and let my sister read them and stuff. But I should have pursued, but I didn't. But yeah, so we talked about some of your inspirations were like R.L. Stein, Stephen King, the television shows. So one of the questions I was asking is like the elements that you believe as a writer that you need to put inside of a horror
Sure.
piece. So like like movies have like the lighting and the music kind of instruments. So what do we need as a writer to have in books?
Something that I'm like getting emotional for absolutely no reason. That's one of my things. Also I'm
That's fine.
Italian, so I get very emotional with my hands. Um,
I'm not Italian. I just
yeah,
am gay
just
and I
it's
just
it's
swing my
it's like
hand.
our thing. But
Yeah.
when I was finishing up the original Voodoo Juice back in 2016-17, I reached out to Anne Rice's son is Christopher Rice, and I have the biggest girl crush on him, hands down. Um, he actually inspired his first novel when he was, I believe, 21, published when he was 22, was A Density of Souls. It's a Southern Gothic novella. It's not a horror, genre piece. Um, but I recommend reading that as well. I'm going to start my eighth or ninth read of the book. Um,
Oh
the
wow.
only, I'm getting catty for a second. The only good thing that my ex was good for was to introduce me to Christopher Rice. Um, Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we all have to throw shade. I mean, it's not a damn. If we're two gays talking and we're not throwing shade, we're
I
not.
am throwing major shade, but that's the only good thing he was, the thing he was good for. Um, but he
Yeah.
introduced me to Christopher Rice, and that's Anne Rice's son. And I had reached out. I was kind of struggling with writing the I believe the prologue to the first book, and he had given me
Okay.
this piece of advice, and it works very well in the horror genre, especially if you want to become an author or a writer. To put the main character in an impossible situation from the beginning that they can't get out of, that they were blindsided, they just are in this big old mess, and they're knee deep in shit. And
Okay.
then figure out the rest of your book in your edits from there. You need to blindside um, your main character and just put the reader in the same boat as that character, and then you proceed with caution.
Oh, that's like actually really good advice. And now, like thinking about it, it's like, of course, because that's what enthralls us right away. We're like, well, how the hell are they going to get out of
Yep,
this one, or how are they going to get out of
exactly.
this, or and sometimes the twist that we see sometimes is that they don't.
Sometimes they don't. I mean, this may say a lot about me. Again, I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, but I enjoy killing my characters off. I mean, it hurts me, but if they can't get out of a certain situation that I had put them in the prologue or chapter one, that also
You got to do what
creates
you.
intrigue for the reader as well.
Yeah, and you have to follow what you're feeling for these people, right? Like you're writing for multiple, I don't know how many characters are in your book, but you're writing for multiple characters. Everyone has a persona and an identity and a purpose. And even if it's a lovable character for your story and what is in your creative space, that doesn't always mean it's going to work out for
Correct.
them.
And I just wanted to add one more thing, especially in the second book that I had finished this past summer. Make the characters as real as possible. They can't all be these fantastical, voodoo queens and fairies. I mean, they need to be relatable, and they need to come
Yeah.
from some sort of inspiration that you have in your own life as well. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, like you or write a character off of you, or an old
absolutely. I
teacher.
mean, even a cute little bartender at, I'm not going to say where, I want to protect my, you know,
Exactly.
but a place that I frequent in America's South, um, even hot bartenders that give you free drinks and flirt with you. I mean, those are all pieces of inspiration that I do put into my
Uh huh.
characters. Yeah.
I mean, it's really amazing. So on the other end, besides the impossible things, what should we look for, like a reader that would be like, this is a horror novel? Like we wouldn't know right away. Like we would know the impossible situation, but what other things should readers look for that would be like, oh,
Try to make or
familiar?
try to understand that originally the impossible situation most likely came from a past trauma. And that's one of the scariest things as a human element. We all share this human experience. Make it relatable and something that could have happened to somebody else. And that, I promise you, and I actually got that from taking the master class by R.L. Stein, um, actually the master class, on how to write young adult horror. Um, Try to make it as realistic, the impossible situation, as realistic as possible.
Okay, that's actually really smart because like, I think that's what we do. We have these imaginations and we relate in certain
Sure.
ways or try
And you
to.
can you can weave in the supernatural elements in edit, while you're editing or even down the line. But originally, make sure, especially coming from my perspective as the writer, as the creator of these characters, as the go-to person that's breathing life as they're speaking to me, definitely make sure that the impossible situation is as realistic as possible, because we all go through our own shit, our own trauma. And
Yeah.
as I had said, and I keep saying, for me as a writer, these um, writing sessions are very cathartic, working through my own shit and weaving them and then putting the shit onto my characters to then deal with going forward.
Yeah. So how long does it take you to write your books? Did it take you the same amount of time each time, or was
Approximately.
one?
So the original Voodoo Juice, I started on the shores. I was drinking this Voodoo Juice bucket. I was like on cloud nine in many different ways, inspired by the South and what have you. So that was originally a summer project. It was summer themed. It originally took place in the 90s, in North Myrtle Beach. I went to New Orleans 2 years later, completely changed the entire landscape of what I wanted to write about and what I was inspired by. Um, that took me on and off 5 years to write and to publish. I wasn't ready to finish. I had to force myself. I actually did a 1 page a day writing prompt in 2014, 15 actually, after I got back from New Orleans. So I wrote 1 page a day and I finished the novel because of the writing prompt. I forced myself to write longer than or more than 1 page per day to just get this done. Took me about
Yeah.
4 years for Origins because I put it down. I had gotten sick. We had moved to where we currently are. Um, 5 years later, then I decided to pick it back up, and I was inspired and pushed by very new, close friends of mine, um, to finish this project and get it published.
Very nice. Very nice. So, realistically, like people think, like we talked about before, that most people want things done
And
in an
never,
instant, and
no,
we,
that is,
no.
unless you have an entire team and you're a millionaire and you can get things pushed out. There are so many, and I'm not knocking these tactics, but there are so many marketers out there,
Yeah.
and I know that we're both also marketers wearing other hats. Um, but all of these funnels and sales tricks and tips to publish your ebook in a day and or a week, that's impossible in my opinion. If you really want to breathe in the fear and let out the project, if that makes sense, you need time. The human brain cannot catch up with getting things out the door quickly, especially if it's a creative type of project.
Yeah.
And I'm not ashamed. It took me 5 years for the first book and 4 years for the second book. And I literally, and I love this in hindsight, but when I was going through all the bullshit of getting it published and getting it ready and being inspired by so many different avenues in my personal life at the moment, quite literally riding this roller coaster of insanity. My fingers were bleeding, they hurt, they were, I was just done, but I pushed myself to finish.
Yeah.
You need to experience that as the creative, sharing these very intimate projects with the world. Otherwise, I think it's not worth it, hands down.
Yeah. And you're taking a risk by putting yourself
Extreme
on these
risk,
pages,
risk by
even.
sharing, again, getting very emotional in the sense that sharing with certain people in my life what the book was about, sending excerpts, making sure that they were proud of me, making sure I was proud of myself.
Yeah.
Um, Even potentially ignoring my partner of 17 years just to get in the mind space of leave me the f alone. I need to finish
Yeah.
this, and then going to a place that I love, carrying the weight, kind of like Jacob Marley, and you know, um, in that Christmas classic, carrying these chains with me states away to just get this project published to make sure that it just gets produced. There are so many elements
Yeah.
that you really can't skip in trying to rush a project like that.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's important for listeners to hear that, especially listeners that are trying to be creative and they feel maybe they're falling behind. They're
No,
not,
no, you're honey,
and
you're on your own path. Like as long
yeah,
as you get it published or not, you can sit with it
you can write
for
a
a year, a month, a week, put it down, make sure the characters talk to you very transparently, very
yeah,
honestly, almost like these are ghosts haunting you. We're bringing it into the horror
yeah,
genre, but if they don't talk to you, you put the project aside and you just let yourself heal for a while.
yeah. So, do we plan on another horror
So
novel?
yes, also working through that
Okay,
trauma in my mind, because finishing Cody's story was so intense, for lack of a better phrase. My future husband purchased a notebook for me for Christmas.
congratulations.
It is, thank you, a horror themed. He said, "Okay, you're healed, honey. Like you need to get to writing, otherwise we're gonna have a problem." So he's pushing me to start my next novel, which is a toss up between the third in the trilogy, the Voodoo Juice series, or an entirely different character offshoot, which will be a vampire character.
I love
Um,
vampires.
but I haven't decided. But they're having a moment right now, um, so I may kind of find the middle ground and also become inspired by other friends of mine and um, what's happening in the world of vampires right now. With AMC just finished Interview with the Vampire, the reboot
Yeah.
series. That was Anne Rice's series.
Did you watch
Um,
it?
and there's a new vampire movie coming out. I did not watch it yet. I don't want to be inspired by outside.
Okay. Themes.
Um, Not
Yeah.
yet. I think I would like to outline the project before watching any more vampire shows or
That's
movies.
smart because there's
Yeah,
so many like ways that it's portrayed. I watched only like the first episode, and again, this is one of those things that I was gonna watch without my husband. He watched the first episode, and now we've never got to pick it back up because we're just busy with other stuff.
life
If
happens.
if he didn't want to watch it, I'd be done with it already. Let me just tell you, they're fucking hot vampire men. Like, what the hell more do you want?
That's all I need to pique my
There's
interest. I
like
mean,
there's gore, there's a story. It's New Orleans. It's very you.
what more do you want? I mean,
Yeah, maybe don't watch it yet because it'll.
yeah, maybe like kind of mess with my
Yeah,
creativity. Um, but speaking of, to just like interject about the whole New Orleans thing, every time. So this is a personal shout out to my best friend, my best female friend. Her name is Melinda. I traveled with her to New Orleans, once every 2 to 4 years. Um, so every time that I go, I have a different paranormal experience with her. That she actually experiences at the same time that
it's
I do.
wild.
Um, so I actually um, weave those experiences into my next projects.
That's awesome. Though I love
Yeah,
the paranormal stuff. I'm one of those people that will like get into the paranormal ghost stuff, freak myself out, and then be afraid to be at home alone. Like I don't know why I do that shit to myself.
yeah. Well, I need a lot of sage. I also, not to sound like I'm completely insane, but I also, uh, this happened throughout my entire life, but also this past summer, essentially when I've been elevating and evolving myself. Um, I also experience things pretty much on a daily basis in my house while I'm traveling. So those also help to get the creative juices flowing
And
for my
you
projects.
don't sound insane. People, you,
Well, thank you.
I think that it's important that we learn to speak our truth without having to put a disclaimer that of what other
Sure,
people might think you sound like. Because I'm working on that with
exactly.
myself because I feel like I do a lot of over explaining or justifications for things, and that's one of my New Year's
Yeah,
resolutions is that we don't have to do that. The right people are going to be attracted, and I don't mean in a sexual way, but the right people are going to be
sure.
attracted to you.
Your tribe
Yeah,
will find you.
I've learned that myself. I have crystals in my house, and I have my sage. I've always been spiritual. I've always had this connection with paranormal things, and it actually runs in my family. And I have become more open to that and
Sure.
honest about it and not really caring about other people. And if they think we're crazy, I mean, they're probably right, but not about that. Not because of
We're still
that.
here talking about it, and we need to go offline and have a different conversation. So,
Exactly. But
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I just wanted to
So that
say,
was
yeah,
so.
it's
Oh, I'm
no, I'm
sorry.
gonna
Go
say
ahead.
it's really nice that you have these inspirations and whatever works in your life and who's in your life, that's great. And nobody's gonna. If
Sure.
people think you sound crazy, they're not the right people.
Sure. I agree 100% on that. Back when I was traveling in 2018 in New Orleans, that's when um, my friend and I, after the book signing for the first book, um, at I'm not going to say the location, but it's the old French Opera House. Everyone can Google and see what that currently is in the French Quarter. Um, for liability issues, just
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
case. But the old French Opera House was this hub of French society in the French Quarter, back in the 18 and early 1900s. So my friend and I were celebrating the book signing because it was where I had wanted to have this event. We went out partying at these different brew houses, and we were going to go home to the again, not going to say where, to the hotel, to get ready to go out for dinner and celebrate even more. So the Ubers wouldn't pick us up. The Ubers were just skipping us, 20-minute wait, 30-minute wait, 40-minute wait. Nobody would come. So we're just pounding back the beers, having a grand old time, talking. I'm getting goosebumps because what I'm about to say still freaks me the fuck out. So this Uber, she keeps canceling, canceling, canceling. This Uber comes in like less than 2 minutes. She goes, "Okay, wrap your shit up. We need to be outside." So this guy's telling us, this local's telling us where the local drug lords live and the celebrities and crazy ass stories, which I love to hear the human element behind people's lives, and where I'm really celebrating life myself in New Orleans with my best friend. So he's asking us about our day. And my friend was kind of like egging me on, and we're a little bit tipsy, going home. And she had said, well, he had a book signing earlier today. And this gentleman had asked, well, where was it? And I told her the old French Opera House. And he said to me, well, what happened to you? Unprompted, he knew something was up. And here come the goosebumps again. My chest is like this prickly pear. So I almost got out of the car. I wanted to just run from this guy because he knew something was going on. And my friend looked at me like she went completely pale. And I said, well, what do you think happened to us?
Yeah.
He was reading some kind of energy, between us. And I had said that my friend heard crackling noises as if a fire was starting, kind of like a paper crumpling or a
Yeah.
campfire starting in the woods, had started while I was at my 2-hour book event. He almost crashed the car. And he said, well, it's funny you had said that because back in 1919, after the last performance of Carmen at the old French Opera House, A fire had started where my table was at the old French Opera House off of Bourbon Street. So that was the inspiration for Origins, in the prologue in chapter number 1. Cody's story was that experience with my friend, was where this fire had taken place right by the men's bathroom hallway in 2018. So
That's it's freaky, and I completely relate to those kinds of stories because things like that happen to me too, and it's unexplainable, and it's also validating when other people experience with you, or you can have those conversations without people looking at you.
but my friend had the experience first. So we're signing and I'm nervous and she's getting me beers and beads and I'm promoting it on social media to get a crowd. And she turned to me about like an hour into the 2 hour event and she said, "Do you hear something?" And I'm like, "It's not the air conditioning. It's not the rain outside. So I started taking pictures to see if I can get any, physical evidence on camera, orbs, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Ghost Adventure, so I know like the tools, what to look
Okay.
for. So I get up, I go around the table to her side. She said, "It stopped because you're here." I said, "Okay." I walked back. She heard this crackling noise again. Then she said, "It is going because you had left." So I'm walking like 2 feet forward, 2 feet back. I'm
Yeah.
doing this little shuffle dance. And then I hear a faint crackling myself, but not as loud as she had. So we didn't think anything of it until we had gone in this Uber, and he confirmed that's where a fire had started after the last performance of Carmen in 1919 of December.
It's just so wild.
So
And New Orleans is
that's
haunted as hell.
it is haunted as hell, but it is the most fabulous city you'll ever visit,
I've never
hands
been. I plan on visiting someday.
down.
Someday.
Someday, I highly recommend it, and I will give you a list of places to check out and have some fun. So,
Perfect. So I'm going to move on to the last part of the interview, which is
sure,
our recommendations on different horror novels.
sure.
So, everyone wants to know, what do we read? What do we like? You know what I mean? So I have 5 books that I picked to recommend to you listeners and to everyone. Now this doesn't mean these are my top 5 all-time books right now. Um, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, I've still am discovering different books, still reading different books, but these are the
Sure.
5 that I thought of that I really liked. And if you, as a listener, are getting new into the horror genre, in the books, here's a couple that I think would work. And I wonder if you have read any of the ones that I've read, which I'm pretty sure a couple of them you probably have. So my top 5 recommendations would be Stephen King's Pet Cemetery, Stephen King's The Shining, The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix,
Okay.
Bathhouse by PJ Vernon. Did you read that?
Did not, but that's going
And
on my list after we speak.
and A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay.
I love that list.
So, Pet Cemetery and The Shining I bought on Amazon during COVID. It was just my job had shut down. I was in the medical field and it shut down because it was an outpatient place. And
Oh
during
boy.
COVID, everyone had to go, they needed supplies, whatever. So I was in school at the time online. And so I would spend my days doing my homework during the day. And then I had all this time during the evening now because I didn't have to work. So I
Sure.
was like, I want to read these books. So I bought them because I wanted to try to read more Stephen King's. I have also a personal goal for me is to read it. I've had the book forever. I always get through like 3 chapters and I never pick it back up. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just very intimidating.
Very intimidating. His books tend to be intimidating. Yes.
It's just a huge book. I don't know why.
They're
It's
like
just,
this big, and you're like, "Whoa, I need a moment."
yeah. So I read Pet Cemetery in 2 days. And for me, like
Wow.
that's not some, for me as a reader, I'm a slow reader. Like I started his new book, Fairy Tale, and it's great. And then that was 2 months ago, and I definitely picked it back up. I've been doing other things. I have
Yeah.
like ADHD or something. But yeah, Pet Cemetery. I've seen the movies, but reading the book, so so graphic and different, and I understand why he's like the master of horror writing. Reading like early work like this, So good. And the same thing goes for The Shining. I always heard about how he didn't like the movie because it was different. And when I read the book, I understood. So I read Doctor Sleep before I read The Shining. I seen the
Okay,
movie, but when the book came out, I read the book, and there was parts in it that I didn't understand because it was a sequel from the book. But
sure,
The Shining is amazing, and it's sad that they did. The movie's great, but I would have liked to see more of the book.
sure, sure.
Have you read either of those?
I Pet Cemetery, yes. The Shining, I have not. That's also on my wish list. I have a whole library of my TBR list.
Okay.
I'll never get through, but one can hope.
Yeah.
Um, I have not read that, but I have read other Stephen King novels again as a young adult. So
Okay.
yeah.
What's your favorite
But,
Stephen King novel? It's a tough question. What's the
tough question. I don't have one. I
okay?
mean, that sounds very cliche. I'm not trying to get out of the
No,
answering
no,
this,
no. I mean, I don't think I
but
have a favorite. I mean, I would just pick Pet Sematary. I think.
he just it's really difficult because his horror novels are just so unique in many different ways, and I just really can't pick one.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I think I'm a fan of just the way he writes.
he is such, oh my gosh, his style is so unique that we will never have again in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So
Now, have you heard of the Final Girl Support Group book?
I did. That's also on my Amazon wish list.
It's so it's so campy and fun. I don't know if you know much about it. It's about the final girls, and all the characters in the book are inspired by final girls from movies like Freddy Krueger and
I love
Halloween
that.
and Silent
I
Night,
can
Deadly
relate.
Night.
I can
Yeah,
relate to that. Is that by the same author that wrote the Vampire Survival Guide or the Southern Vampire?
I think so. I know what you're
Same.
saying. I believe
Yes.
so. No, I'm terrible. Like I said, the book thing I'm still getting more into, which is why I've
Sure.
been wanting to do an episode on books. And I'm so glad that you reached out. It was like
Oh, thank
one of
you.
those experiences because I've been wanting to find a way to get this episode out there because I am so novice in it. I didn't want to try to force an episode where I
Sure.
didn't know too much of what I was talking about.
Sure.
So, but
Well,
yeah,
I am honored that we kind of eased into the horror literature, you know,
yeah.
with each other. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But definitely check out the Final Girl Support Group and then
Yes,
Bathhouse. I read. Have you heard of that?
I have, but I have not
Yeah.
read that.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's cute. It's fun. It's very gay.
I love.
Very
We are unapologetically gay right now. So
yes.
sign me
It's
up for
for me. It reads. Now this is gonna sound like a dig. It
that.
reads as though it would be the first gay Lifetime mystery movie, like gay horror
Why haven't
movie.
they done that yet? Let's team
Yeah,
up and write a script.
let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, me too.
And
Me
then A
too.
Head Full of Ghosts I've actually saw on TikTok and I was like, let me read that. And I thought that was fun. It
Sure.
was a good one. So those are
I'm adding all
my
these to my wish list after we get off.
yeah, and they're not
Yeah.
big. They're not huge books. They're little books and you can get through in like a week if you're dedicated to reading every day or
Sure.
something.
Sure.
Um but those are my top 5 recommendations and I have your list. And I'm going to read them if that's okay.
Please do.
Yes. So this is do you go by Joseph?
Joe for this is fine. Like Joseph
Okay.
is more pen name professional,
Yeah,
but for the
exactly.
queer art, Joe is
Joe.
totally fine.
Okay. I have a friend whose name is Joseph, one of my besties. I call him Joey. He or Joe because he usually a lot of people call him Joe now, but I grew up calling him Joey. But yeah. So Joe's list is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, The Crucible by Arthur Miller, and the
Correct.
cast of I'm gonna say it wrong again.
Amontillado by Poe,
Amontillado by Poe, and then Kindred by Octavia Butler. Now those are your
which
top five.
actually I recommend going if you have Hulu to
Okay.
watch season 1 of Kindred. Just came out about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
So it is it's horror genre. It's not specifically, your quintessential horror. Um, but it was over 300 pages, and I actually read that on my Nook, and I read that in about 3 days. Again,
Oh
I'm a
wow.
very slow reader myself, so I was so intrigued. Post Me Too movement, it fits in with that as well.
Oh, very nice.
Historically and politically. Um, And I just over the summer gave my new gay best friend the recommendation to read Kindred, which they actually compare to Antebellum, which has nothing to do with the movie. A little trivia for you. So
Very nice. I'm gonna definitely
yes,
look at these. I mean, I've heard so much about Frankenstein, like obviously, but like the book itself, I've heard so many good things that
completely different than the
yeah.
1930 something movie.
And I actually have like the Barnes and Noble like Anne Rice book that has, the silver one that's like Interview with the
Yes,
Vampire, Queen of the
yes,
Damned.
yep.
Never read it though. I bought it as a collector's thing.
Anne
Um,
Rice is not for everybody, Eric. I mean, you have to really be into her prose. She referred because actually when I had gotten back from New Orleans about a week later last year, she had passed.
yeah,
So rest in peace. I dedicate this little section to Anne Rice and Christopher
yes,
Rice because she's such a beacon.
yeah,
I think for the gays especially.
yeah,
But jumping back to quickly, Frankenstein. Even as a 8, 9, 10 year old, when I was reading the abridged, children's version of that, there's definitely a homosexual element to that, where Dr. Frankenstein creates man. And I didn't understood what that meant as a person that was questioning back when I was younger. But if you are struggling or you need a very classic novel to kind of look at yourself in the mirror and understand why you're coming from where you're coming from, I highly recommend reading Frankenstein for many different reasons. It definitely ties into what we talked about at the beginning of the episode.
absolutely. I, I,
Yeah.
I, I'm definitely gonna check that one out. I'm gonna look at all of these. Like I said, Anne Rice, I've always wanted to. Like I said, as a reader, I'm still new and it's something to do. My sister, my one sister anyway, is a huge reader. And I may be wrong. I think she read my book. I think she read all of that. Like she's just reading fucking everything. And
Sure.
she's got most of my Stephen King books. And if you're listening, which she doesn't listen to the episode and I talk junk to her all the time, but I always say like, I want my Stephen King books back because I
Yeah.
collect them.
Get those back and put them on your shelf, and then
Yes, I
yeah.
have my little shelf. Half of them are missing because I started Stephen King with the Mr. Mercedes trilogy,
Okay.
which was not so much horror, it was more crime with the Bill
Sure.
Hodges trilogy. But yeah, yeah, she has like the other two of them. But yeah, I love Stephen King. I got to finish his. I bought both of his new books and haven't read them yet. But definitely, those are each of our top 5 recommendations. I think that they're
I
great.
love it.
I think that I like that we have different ideas of what we should recommend to readers because in my looking at the two lists, it could be like if you start off with my list, it's very easy reads, and your list seems a little bit more next level,
Well,
which
maybe
is
we can do a book club and then just like
let's do
recommend
it.
and speak about
Yes,
each book.
share it on Instagram and TikTok. I'm all about it.
Yeah, we should.
What's your read? What's your recommendation this week? I'm all about it. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm gonna definitely check out these books as well because I'm always looking for something. I bought like 5 books last year of horror books that I haven't read.
I
2 were
love
Stephen
that.
King. A couple I don't even know who the authors. They just kind of were attractive to
Sure,
me. But
sure.
yeah, um, we're coming up to the end of the
Oh
episode, so
no.
I know I'm gonna answer this week's terrifying trivia
Oh
question.
boy. Oh boy.
So, at the beginning, around the beginning of the episode, the question was, "What was Stephen King's first book and the year it was published?" And your answer was,
It was Carrie.
"That is correct. You were
Yes.
correct. You have gotten that. That I didn't know that." And the year,
1972.
close, 1974.
Okay, I was off by 2 years.
Very, very close. I mean, listen, you basically got the whole question right. There's like,
That just makes me look even better.
yes, so it's nice and it's funny because I was just talking. There's a horror convention again coming around near me that I'm trying to get to, and they just announced that the lady that played her mom in the movie is going to be there.
Wow. When is
So
this? Shoot me a DM,
March,
and I would love to go to that
yeah,
too.
yeah. So I'm going to try and go again because I'm trying to get more out into these convention worlds and
Sure.
everything in the horror community. But
Get
yeah,
your
it's
name out there, promote, bring business cards,
yeah,
bring your
and just
microphone.
have
Yeah.
fun. Exactly. So my sister was like, sent me because she's gonna come with me because she's a horror fan, my one sister, and she sent me the message and she's like, "Look, I don't know who this is," and I'm like, "Well, she's the mother from Carrie." I said, "I never saw the Stephen King movie or the original movie. I think I saw the remake with Chloe."
There were a
Ortez
few
or
remakes,
something.
even some made for TV movies.
Yeah, but I knew who she was from that. But yeah, she's like, I've never seen Carrie. I'm like, have you seen no iteration of Carrie?
I
But
know.
anyway,
That's okay.
I grew up in the '90s watching the second one, The Rage, Carrie 2.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was I mean, it gets a lot of hate, but I liked it. But I was young
So does
then.
Halloween 3 for many different reasons. I mean, come on, like,
I finally bought that this year on Blu-ray because I'm
yeah,
trying to up my collection. So
yeah,
I don't know if you listen, but like I for many years I stopped my horror self was what's the word, hibernating, kind
yeah.
of, you know, not there because I didn't think that I didn't have a community. But then last year I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be, and I'm gonna go out there. And now
I
I have
know.
this room, and I'm bringing myself back out there. And
Yeah,
and I got validated by a friend of mine, a childhood friend who doesn't live around here anymore. I haven't talked to in years. We reconnected on Instagram or on Snapchat, and something had got brought up, and something about nostalgia, and like something in my room. And I was like, yeah, I love, because I also stream on Twitch, like video games and stuff. I
yeah.
played like all the old stuff. And I was like, I love my little video game horror room. And she was like, yeah, I see stuff in your pictures that you send on Snapchat. I'm so happy that you still do that stuff.
I
And that
love
made
that.
me happy because I hadn't done that stuff.
But
And I,
it's what makes you happy.
exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit about me. Before I end the show,
Oh boy.
I want to open it back up to you. Anything you want to, Voodoo Juice, it says, what I think is correct. Voodoo Juice Origins is your second novel. It's out on Smashwords on ebook format and downloadable on Barnes and Nobles for $3.99.
Correct. Correct. It is the
Okay.
perfect read because now it's carnival season. King's Day was last Friday, and it's a good introduction to the horror genre, the queer horror genre, as well as Mardi Gras and all things New Orleans. So yes.
Okay. What do you want to, last things do you want people to know? Like how can they find you to keep up with content that you're giving out? Do you have a website, your handles, anything like that?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend if you guys would like to connect with me. Thank you so much, first and foremost. I would love to speak with fans, readers, queer queers of all ages and genre, and such. But you can find me on Instagram mainly at Joseph A. Federico. I post stories, do recommendations. I also am a social media marketer. That's the other hat that I wear with my own business. You can go to anchors2duskpublishing.com, or you can actually text or call me 973-289-3517 to order a hard copy of the book signed, the first two books, or also book a time with me to work on your social media or your horror business going forward.
Yes, that's perfect. Well, I really, really, really appreciate you reaching out because, like I said, this was something I've been looking to do, and I
The pleasure is
appreciate
all mine. Thank you so
having
much.
having conversations with fellow queer horror fans because there's not that many that I know right now. So
But we're
building
out
this
there,
community,
and the internet
yeah,
brought us together. So,
yeah. So we're gonna bring us all together as one queer, scary, queer horror day.
yes.
But again, thank you so much. I'm going to look at those books because I'm very interested in your work, and
Thank you very
you caught
much.
my attention. And I'm a blunt person. I'd be like, "Oh, it's not my style." Like I would be honest, but the paranormal, everything about it is very intriguing. So I'm going to check them out, and hopefully we remain in touch and swap ideas and things like that. It would be
I would love
wonderful.
that. Thank you so
We'll
much for
do another
everything, Eric.
future episode. So I end every episode by saying "Stay spooky." So I'm going to say that. So I always say, "Everyone, have a great night. Stay safe." We'll say, "Stay spooky."
Definitely. Yes.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.